You're listening to the Reds Podcast.
This is episode number 84. Tony Robbins has a brand new book. It's called Master the Money Game, 7 Simple Steps to Financial Freedom. We're going to be going over some of the big ideas from the book and also give you a special offer to get your copy of the audiobook free. That's coming up on this episode of the Red Podcast.
This is the Red Podcast. Real entrepreneur development. Make more money. Work less and live a life of freedom. No BS advice that really works. Here's your hosts, David Hooper and Laurel Staples.
Tony Robbins sent me a copy of his new book. It's called Money, Master the Game, 7 Simple Steps to Financial Freedom. It's a big book.
It's almost 600 pages. I definitely haven't gotten all the way through it yet.
You can feel the gravitas. This thing is huge. And he makes a lot of big promises. Read some of the writing off the back there.
See, on the back it says, this book will show you how to create a guaranteed lifetime income stream that you will never outlive, reach your financial goals 30% quicker, and retire up to 10 years sooner, achieve peace of mind and financial security, even if you started late, ! Peer into the minds of 50 of the world's most successful investors. A lot of stuff back here.
So kind of like a Think and Grow Rich thing, he interviewed a lot of people that are very, very successful with money, and we will be talking about some of the big ideas from this book on this episode. This is the Red Podcast. Red stands for Real Entrepreneur Development. We help you build an audience, sell more products, and make more money. We're specialists in personality marketing, bringing out your personality in the marketing that you do, and also bringing out the personality of your products. What we're talking about today, the new book by Tony Robbins, Money, Master the Game, 7 Simple Steps to Financial Freedom. Again, it's a lot of investment advice in this book, and I'm going to share 3 of the steps within, but also a lot of the big ideas that I think apply to the listeners of this podcast, entrepreneurs, because Tony's a great mindset guy. That's really what he's known for.
Mm-hmm.
Out of those 7 steps, step 1, make the decision to become an investor, not just a consumer. And I think that this is huge, even if you have no interest in the stock market, no interest in investing. I think just for entrepreneurs in general, you're investing in yourself. You're investing in the content that you produce, not just consuming it. You're not just on Facebook talking about things. You're not just reading books. You're also writing them, for example.
I've always thought about it in terms of I want to spend my money on things that will have a return on investment for me. So I'm never going to be that person that's rolling around in some expensive car because there's no return on investment. I'm not going to buy 10 big screen TVs, no return on investment. But I do like to spend money on my business, on making more money, on doing things that will enhance my lifestyle in that way. And so that piece of advice really resonated with me.
Yeah, you're not a consumer. You're actually doing stuff within your business that's going to bring back dividends. What he really says here, though, and I think this is something we need to talk about for a minute, everything starts with a decision. So make the decision. A lot of people confuse consumption with achievement. You think, well, I drive a nice car or I'm in a nice office. We saw it a lot in the dot-com boom, and I'm seeing it now more and more now that that's starting to rear its head again. People living on investors' money and not actually making a profit themselves. There's a huge difference, and I think that's what he's talking about here. From a business perspective, you're talking about consumption versus real achievement. Just because you've got all this stuff doesn't mean that you've achieved anything.
That's why I said earlier that you're never going to find me driving some really expensive, fancy car because again, it goes back to, am I achieving something by getting that car, or am I just consuming something? Is there any ROI on a car like that or on any product like that? And I think in society, there is a lot of confusion around consumption and achievement. And I think you really have to look at yourself to figure out which one are you doing.
On a related note, I also think there's a lot of confusion between movement and action. I mentioned this on an interview that I did yesterday. I said, we create more than we consume. Just because you're reading a book, just because you're going to an office every day doesn't mean that you're actually doing any work. For entrepreneurs, the real work happens when something gets sold. Idea number 2 is become an insider. Know the rules of the game before you get in the game. And he had a great example of this. Has this ever happened to you, Laurel? You run into a kid, and the kid says, hey, you want to play me in a game? Maybe a video game or some kind of other game that the kid is playing, and you realize that it's a setup at that point when the kid says, you go first. Mm-hmm. You get in there without knowing what you're doing. Then the kid comes in and just completely cleans up. And I thought that was a great story but that's exactly what we do in business a lot of times. We don't set ourselves up to win by finding out how the game is played before you jump in. Now, on some levels, you have to jump in to find out how the game is played as far as the little details, but I'm talking about just jumping in, quitting your job without having any idea what you want to do.
That's what I was going to say, is I do feel like you got to get in the game to learn the game. Like, you're never going to learn the video game that kid asks you to play unless you start playing it at some point. So I think there's a balance there, is you want to know the rules, you want to have some information before you get in, but you also need to just go ahead and get in.
Basically, what I think he's saying is you set yourself up to win, you get the information that you can before you jump in, but also understanding the real information, the real lessons come from jumping in. Rule number 3, the most important investment decision of your life. He says, never put your eggs in one basket. That's something we definitely do when it comes to distribution, when it comes to product creation, when it comes to marketing. Never rely on one source for any of those things. When you do, it can pay off sometimes, but what happens when that comes to an end? You're in trouble.
I've known entrepreneurs that do different things, and you've known these people as well, David, is some of them have one business that they're putting all their effort into and working really hard on, and some of them are diversifying. Maybe they have their business, maybe they own a rental property, maybe they're doing some consulting. Do you think one way or the other is better?
Well, according to Tony, you should diversify, and I do believe that you should diversify, but at the same time, I think you need to be focused. If you're an investor, you want to be a focused investor. He's already said you want to play the game that you can win. Set yourself up to win. So you're not going to want to invest in things that you don't understand, for example, or get involved with businesses that you don't understand or just be all over the place. So I do think you want to be focused, but at the same time, I'm talking about one income stream, one distribution point, one product. I don't think you can be that focused. So those are 3 big ideas out of the 7. The book, Tony Robbins, Master the Money Game, 7 Simple Steps for Financial Freedom. We're going to have this and more linked at redpodcast.com/84, including information on how you can download a free audiobook right now. He's got some other big ideas I want to cover, though, while we've got time here. He says to get where you want to go, you have to know where you are now. Several years ago, when I was just getting my business started and I was spending a lot more than I was bringing in, there was a time when I racked up some debt, bill collectors are calling, letters are coming in, and I just stopped answering the phone, stopped opening my mail up, and finally, after months and months and months, I finally did, and I knew where I stood, and I remember thinking, man, this is great because now I actually know where I stand. I'm better off than I was yesterday, even though I was with my head in the sand yesterday, because I can actually do something about this. I think it's a lot like weight loss. If you want to lose weight, that's pretty general. But if you're very specific about the amount of weight you need to lose, you at least have something that you can shoot for.
And you have to know where you are now with that to know where you want to go.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what he's saying. You can't just think of, hey, I want to make more money. He's talking about having definitive goals. And this is what we talked about earlier here in this episode, is that Tony Robbins, he's known for his mindset stuff, not really investment. And that's why I actually read this book. That's the first part of it. You've got to know where you want to go to get there.
To have a good money mindset, it is really important to know where you are with your money. There are so many people out there, they have no idea what they're spending, no idea what they're bringing in. They've never put a number in Excel or anything like that to add up their expenses or anything. So that is a really critical component. If you want to make more money, you have to know where you are now with your money, and you have to be on top of that. That's the only way you can go higher than where you are now.
You always run into people who say, I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to have a successful business, but they don't know where their skill set is. They think they're great at everything, or they don't even think about the skills they're going to need. I think, for example, public speaking, unless you get up in front of a crowd and actually give a speech, you're not going to know how good or bad that you are. You can't just assume that it's handled.
And you're probably still not going to know how good or bad you are when you get up there. But I get your point.
Yeah, well, or you may think that you're worse than you are when you're actually not as bad.
But you do need to know where you are. You need to assess your situation to be able to move forward.
Know where you stand. You can't get where you want to go without knowing where you are now. He also says this, I thought this is a great big idea. You can't earn your way to wealth. You're not going to get wealthy by working a job. We'd agree with that.
What is wealthy, though? There are plenty of people that work jobs that make plenty of money.
Well, I think he's talking about big money. And here's an example of this. You think about doctors making pretty good livings, right? You know a lot of doctors. They're doing okay. But remember when we were in Sedona just a few months ago, and we drove by this guy's house, and there was a guy driving the car. He said, that guy in that house, he invented LASIK. I don't know if he was a scientist. I don't know what his deal was, but he's not a doctor performing LASIK. He's the guy who invented it. And that was a huge house. Told us a story. He put an observatory on his house. And I think it was on the second story, maybe the third story, and it violated the building codes of Sedona, Arizona. So they actually had to knock a floor off of this house, put it on the first floor. It wasn't a thing to him, the guy said, because this guy's making so much money. Can you imagine that? Inventing LASIK. A lot of people have had that done, and it's thousands of dollars per session. This guy's getting a piece of every single one of those.
It's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, and I think that's what Tony's talking about. I think he's talking about beyond just working a job kind of wealth. You can make some money working a job, but he's talking about really, really going big. Another big idea, compound interest, the most powerful force in the universe, according to Albert Einstein. I love the book Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. Have you read that?
Mm-hmm.
It's a whole book on compounding. In this case, compound interest, what we're talking about. It's not just for money, though. That's why I think that the compound effect is so good. It's little bitty steps that you can take every day. They build upon themselves. And I think about it when I think about books. Let's take Tony Robbins for an example. He's got several books on top of books. He's got tape programs. He's got seminars. And when you combine those, that's much more powerful than any one of those things or all of those things separated out. There's a synergy there, a compound effect.
So what would an entrepreneur do right now if they wanted to get compound interest on their business?
I think compound interest starts with doing those little things every day. I think it comes with creating something every day. If you've got a podcast, write a book. If you've got a book, write a podcast. If you're doing those two things, go out and do public speaking. If you've got those three things, go out and do a blog. I think it's adding as much as you can to the conversation in different ways, and all of those things put together and those habits that you're doing every day. If you keep doing that habit, think about going to the gym. Let's take it back to weight loss a minute. You know where you are and you know where you want to go. All of those habits in place daily, that's going to start stacking on top of each other, as opposed to just showing up at the gym once, maybe 20, 30 minutes, and expecting to lose a ton of weight. It doesn't work like that. Compounding in your business is the same way.
At the same time, you don't want to put a ton of stuff out there just willy-nilly.
Absolutely not. What I'm talking about is putting great content out there and doing it consistently. Certainly not doing it willy-nilly, not doing it just whenever you feel like it. I'm talking about being great. Compounding also works on a negative. If you put a bunch of junk out there, you're going to get junk back in return.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly less in the terms of the results that you get. Another big idea, the time to give is now. I thought this was great. He talked about at the very beginning of this book, he's giving away 50 million meals to hungry people in this country. I thought this was fascinating. And he talks about giving in the book. He says you need to train your brain to give now. The time to start doing that is when you don't have a lot of money. Just get into the habit. I'm going to combine this with another big idea here. He says people feel like the future is not real. And when it comes to saving, for example, and this applies to giving too, this is why I'm putting these two things together. You want to start saving now. The best way to do that is just take it out of your bank account automatically before you even know it's there. Set up something, maybe it's $10, $50 a week, whatever you can afford. Take some of your money every week and have it automatically deposited into an account or to some kind of investment opportunity, wherever you want your money to go, or maybe a charity, but just do it automatically so you don't even notice that it's not there.
I think my father's been telling me that advice since I was 5. So it's good advice.
Well, it's great advice, and that goes back to what he said. He said, people feel like the future is not real. Right now, I'm 42 years old, bought my first house. I think I was 25, and that's not a really long stretch, although if you told me that I'd be 42 at 25, I'd be surprised. It felt like it was a long time in the future. Had I thought about that, I would have done things completely differently. I would have still owned the first house that I had, for example, and it would have been paid off. It was paid off. We would have been making money on that every month. That's compounding. That's making those small decisions, and that's thinking ahead to the future. And that's what this book is about. If nothing else, I think you're going to get some big ideas to show what's possible, because of the people that he interviews, a lot of them are very, very old. I'm talking in their 80s, pushing 90. They're still out working. They've got a ton of cash, and they're loving every minute of it. Before long, we're all going to be 80 or 90. And hopefully we'll be having that much fun with that much money.
And you talked about habits, David, and I think that's really what you're talking about here with training your brain to give, is it's just getting in the habit of saving or giving, which is something that if you have ever tried to lose weight or eat healthier, exercise, it's just a habit that you have to get into, and you don't have to go full force at the very beginning, but you do have to start doing it and start doing it on a regular basis and then build from there.
Well, little things add up, and that's where compounding comes in. Those little things add up to big things, and it's much better. You've probably seen the statistics that if you were to start, I think it's something like $1,000, let's say, invested when you're 20, you could stop investing and have more money than somebody starts when they're 30, investing like $5,000, $10,000 on an ongoing basis. It's crazy what compounding can do. And when you start early, when you start thinking about the future, whether it's the business that you're creating or, in the case of this book, Money, Master the Game, investments, it's going to pay off. And it doesn't take that long to make it happen. You're going to be that old anyway, right? You might as well be investing, doing the right thing, and have that money when you get there.
Very true.
Next big idea, I love this one. You can't grow without something to push back against. Adversity makes us better. You and I have talked about it several times. Success is a lousy teacher.
It's true. Success really can't teach you anything or how to get through the tough times that you will inevitably come up against. So it is that adversity that gets you the skills that you need to get through any times, good times, bad times, all the time.
You know, I've been doing yoga for several years, been doing it since 1998. Got in there very, very tight. The first yoga class that I ever went to, my teacher told me. She said, you're very lucky that you came in here, because had you not, you're so tight, your back would have snapped. That was her advice to me. And since then, I've been to a lot of yoga classes. I practice it every day. And I've seen a lot of people come in, they're flexible. They have maybe too much flexibility. And because of that, they can get into these different contortions and they can do things that I've had to work a long, long time to, but they don't know their own limits. And I see a lot of these guys get injured. I think that's what he's talking about here, that you can't grow without something to push back against. Just because they're flexible doesn't mean they're growing mentally or on the inside, the inner aspects of yoga. Same thing is true with success. Think about weight training, what you do when you go in and you lift a heavy weight. You're tearing a muscle. You're putting it against resistance. It's more than it can handle. You're tearing the muscle, then it grows back bigger and stronger.
I would say it's better to have the adversity in the very beginning. Instead of having that success in the beginning, have those tough times where you learn all that you need to learn.
Yeah, but if you're pushing yourself, I think we're always going to have that adversity because we're growing, we're getting bigger as people, stronger as people. And because we want to grow as people, we're taking on bigger things. And we've got that adversity. It would have seemed monumental when we started, but now it doesn't seem as bad, but it's still adversity.
You do have to keep in mind that this adversity or some resistance to push back against is outside your comfort zone. I mean, that's where it resides. If you want to grow, you have to push those boundaries.
He's got some great big money ideas here. Money is a vehicle. It's neither good nor bad. Sort of feels like The Secret to me. Remember that movie? Remember that book?
I do.
It's a good book. And I think that's something that is really important for anybody reading this book, any entrepreneur, because a lot of people have issues around money. We think, oh, those fat cats on Wall Street, Those guys are rich, therefore they're evil. They did something bad to get their money. And what Tony is saying here, money is just a vehicle. It's going to make you more of whatever you are. If you're a good person, you can do good things with it. 50 million meals in the case of this book, he actually advanced that in advance of the royalties. Went ahead and did it. He's going to earn the money back later. I think that's a big, bold move, and I think it shows what you can do with money if you want to. He could have also bought 50 million guns with it, maybe.
We hope not.
But it's just a vehicle. It's not the money's fault. It's the guy holding the money.
Did you ever see that movie in the 90s called The Mask with Jim Carrey?
I did not.
It was a good movie. But Jim Carrey found this mask. It was the mask of Loki, which is some ancient god or whatever. And he would put on this mask, and anyone who put on this mask would become more them. So their deepest desires and personalities and everything that made them them would just come out to the extreme. And I think that's how it is with money, is it allows you to be more you and to do what you want to do without anything holding you back from doing that.
Yeah. When it comes to money, Tony also said something great. He said, you're the creator, not just the manager. I love that, because a lot of people, I think, that they sit back and wait for money to come to them. And Tony Robbins is saying, no, you're in charge here. You go out and get the money. You're not just managing it, you're actually creating it. So if you want money, it's out there. Go create it. The book, Money, Master the Game, 7 Simple Steps to Financial Freedom. It is available now wherever books are sold. And if you go to redpodcast.com/84, got a special offer for you. You can actually get the audio book version of this free. So redpodcast.com/84. If you have any questions or comments, you have suggestions for future Red Podcast episodes, we're happy to hear that. And you can do that via redpodcast.com as well. Get in touch with me. Get in touch with Laurel directly. Red 3X, our mastermind and coaching program, where you're taking applications now. We only have room for 7 people. You want to start the new year right. Get connected with high-level entrepreneurs that are working, be challenged, and have the best year ever personally and professionally. We would love to have you as a part of this, but it's not for everybody. Go to redpodcast.com/apply. We will review your application. You'll have a one-on-one personal interview with me or Laurel. If it's a match, we'll go from there. Thank you for listening to Red Podcast. See you next time on the next episode.
You've been listening to Red Podcast, Real Entrepreneur Development. Subscribe today using iTunes, Stitcher, or via RSS at redpodcast.com.